Welcome to the Scaling Smart podcast, where we bring together industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators to discuss key insights, strategies, and experiences that drive success both for themselves and their customers. I'm Billy Mitchell, your host, and today I'm excited to introduce a special guest. We've got Matt Charney, who is playing a dual role, CMO of Employer.com, as well as Head of Strategic Communications for Recruiter.com. Matt, really appreciate you joining me today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, Billy.
Absolutely. All right. So, what I'm excited to talk to you about today are a couple things. One, I obviously want to learn about you. I want to learn about your organization, um, organizations, we can say. Also, the industry as a whole. Talk about your ideal client, a little bit about your competition. And then let's jump into the meat of it, which is going to be that growth and scale, which the audience here is looking to kind of get ideas of what's worked, what's not working, and just, a little bit of those tips and tricks for us. So, if you're ready, let's jump right on into it.
I'll do my best.
Awesome. All right, let's start with getting to know you and your business. If you could, in a 90-second overview, what do you do and why?
The why is pretty easy because it's a paycheck and probably a nice equity payout. However, what do I do? It's a question I have to ask myself every Monday morning, but I am the sole marketing and communications person for Employer.com, which is the functioning holding company of all of the different brands that we support, which include Bounty Jobs, Recruiter.com, Bench Accounting, Before You Apply, and a few others I'm probably forgetting. So essentially, I am doing all marketing work across all those brands.
I love it. So I was looking at your LinkedIn. You've obviously got an impressive resume. How did you get into this line of work? Do you generally enjoy HR and compliance and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I hate HR. But to be honest, my background's in recruiting. So,
Okay.
which is one of those weird things. It sits in HR, but really shouldn't, particularly because the personalities and objectives are antithetical. But I do love recruiting, particularly because I probably couldn't have gotten a job doing anything else but selling people jobs, right? So, how I got into it is simple. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in screenwriting. I was working at Comedy Central in packaging and development. Answered a Craigslist job for a talent scout, which turned out to be a way that companies say recruiter, and the rest is kind of history. Having started my career, I actually worked in recruiting for companies like Disney, Warner Brothers, and then I actually bounced over and I wrote a blog post called "How Recruiters Read Resumes," which in 2009 was about as viral as you could get at the time. And as a result of that, I got called by Monster. I was living in LA. They flew me to Boston. I was like, this is going to be funny, right? And they ended up hiring me to be their head of B2B content and social. And I've
Wow.
just been kind of doing this ever since. So while it's not screenwriting, at the same time, it is using brand voice, identity, and storytelling. So didn't totally
Yeah.
waste that $120,000.
That's awesome. That's good. Yeah, investment paying out a little bit, I guess. All right, let's let's talk about your ideal clients. So, when you are building out marketing plans, marketing campaigns, tell me a little bit about who you're targeting, your audience. Who would they be? Where are they? What are they doing?
So I think you see a little bit less now than maybe a couple of years ago, but certainly as we move from enterprise more down market, I'm starting to see this trend really be much more prevalent, which is there seems to be a bifurcation between people who have, I'll call them OGs, been doing this for a long time, have status quo, they embrace the status quo. If it's not broken, don't fix it. We're good, right? I know how to do this. And then, there's what I would call the human equivalent of challenger brands, which are people who are willing to experiment, who are willing to look outside of their industry, who are willing to iterate, and really willing to help develop partnerships with vendors. And that is my ideal client profile. Are people who can not only help grow our revenue in our pipeline, but also be able to provide the type of feedback and perspective that we need to actually make the product better.
Yeah, I been doing this for a while as well, and the more I talk to people, the more I understand how powerful and important partnerships are just in general. So that is definitely a vein that I would love to dive a little bit deeper on. So we'll come back there in just a second. But when thinking about your ideal customer, what are some of the major challenges that they're facing that your communications, your brand voice, all of that is trying to speak into? Tell us a little bit about what they're facing.
So, obviously we're working with small business owners, which is I'm finding is actually identical to startup founders, which I've also been working with for much longer. So as I make this transition, I realize that structurally they're pretty much the same thing. And what are they looking for? They are looking to grow their business, grow their own profiles, grow their brands, create revenue, and then pay out whoever they have to as a general rule and keep cash flow. What they don't want to do is spend a lot of time doing stuff that takes away from that front facing and revenue creation part of the business. So that's the stuff that we do, which is ostensibly really boring. So things like, tax preparation and submission, finding tax credits, bookkeeping, payroll, employer of record, and HR compliance. Entrepreneurs don't want to have to deal with that. So in a way, I think of us as like almost like an offensive lineman in football. We are there so that you don't notice us, and the only time you would is if we do something wrong. So hopefully, we don't get a lot of penalty flags though.
That's good. Yeah, I remember vividly the transition from when I was managing HR or people or compliance or recruiting, fill in the blank, right, of that piece, and going to a point where we could hire somebody and start to build out a team, whatever the case might work. Man, it was a night and day difference for how well I could operate on a day-to-day basis. Um, Diving into your industry, and I'm going to kind of combine a couple questions here. Let's look at the next 5 to 10 years, and maybe 10 years might even be too much with how fast things change. But over the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years, where where's your industry headed? And thinking about your competition, what are some of the biggest challenges they're going to face? And then conversely, what are some of the biggest opportunities for you?
Yeah, so I'm going to speak more broadly to HR tech than fintech because we kind of serve both markets. I just
Sure.
happen to have the background in the one. So, what I think we're certainly seeing is a trend that started a while ago. HR should surprise nobody who's worked for a company. Has systems that were last updated probably around the same time as Windows, like had flying toasters, right?
Yep.
So, that said, what you've seen is sort of a lot of stagnation in that space, and now these legacy vendors, your Oracles, your Workdays of the world, are really trying to come up with solutions for the lack of product development that they've done over the past few decades, where they just kind of had the hubris to pay their commission salespeople and cruise on to an easy renewal. So what that's starting to look like is a lot like AI. Like every single conversation, I'm sure we're not the only industry. It's just silly to me,
Yep.
like that
Yep.
an HR business partner thinks that they have to be the AI expert in the company, right? So that coupled with these, I would say, more emerging point solutions, as opposed to these giant platform plays, the ease of integration, and certainly the fact everyone's just using the same large language models to sell product. You're getting the erosion likely, and you're going to see this with Employer.com's offering of being a real like dedicated HR or even recruiting solution. What you're going to see is good enterprise tech, and it's going to function a lot like consumer tech, and it's going to work across departments. So I think from a technology perspective, what you're going to actually see is a single platform that's really easy to use that can work across the enterprise. And likely that's going to lead to a pretty steep loss in HR specialist jobs. I would think like, your benefits administrators or compensation people, at least at first, just because, once that highly manual work has been automated, once things like hiring have been subsumed by the budget owners, you're going to see the need for a cost center that most people don't like really just shift towards compliance, which will ultimately mean going to outside lawyers because your HR person likely doesn't know much about actual legislation or law. So that's where I see, this industry going. And I think, the opportunity there is that historically small businesses have not been able to compete with enterprises on that platform front. Like there's no, SMB mom and pop shop that's gonna be like, yeah, we should buy SAP. Not actually saying that's an advantage, but like that would be your cash flow probably for 5 years.
Yep.
So, in leveling the playing field, I think that there's a lot of opportunities for companies that can deploy easily, don't have a ton of integration, don't have a services layer, and are really intuitive, but also offer the same end-to-end capabilities have historically only been available to enterprise, just on demand, and being able to um, roll out specific um, per instance updates and changes. I think that's really the opportunity there is can you move faster than the other guy as opposed to can you buy more companies, consolidate them, and erode choice.
Yeah, that's a lot of really good stuff there. And I can imagine just from my own experience managing employees, if you can reduce the amount of times that an employee has to say, "Hey, where do I find this information? What about this info? Who do I contact for our benefits? Who do I contact for, retirement, 401k, et cetera, fill in the blank." If you've got a single source platform that you can just plug in and it basically interacts with you like an assistant, man, that's going to put a lot of people out of positions.
Well, or it's going to, in marketing speak, it's going to free up their time for more value added work, which we all know is just a way of saying, yeah, it's going to cut a lot of jobs. But
See,
maybe not a bad thing.
that's why you have marketing and communications in your titles, and I don't.
Yeah, I could choose my title, so I should have gone with Emperor of the World, but, CMO it is.
Hey, you know what? Maybe the next one. Maybe the next one.
Oh,
Awesome. Well, let's talk about growth and scale. I think you've got a really interesting. I personally believe you've got an interesting background, interesting industry. So let's talk about how you're growing. Right now, what are some of the best ways that you guys are acquiring new customers? Are you doing online advertising? Is it referral, partnerships? Is it a combo of everything? Where are we at?
so I've learned a pretty interesting lesson maybe over the last couple of years, which is companies spend so much time, money, and resources on building a brand and then amplifying the brand that it's easier to actually just buy the brand outright, which is why we talk about recruiter.com, employer.com, bench.com. Those entities are going to have brand cachet whether or not they actually have existed because people think that they have. So as it turns out, that's actually much cheaper and much faster way to grow than it is to be like, hey, we're employerhq.co, and here's our cool logo. And so I think that is it. We do not do paid media. I think anyone who's buying display ads in the year of our Lord 2025, like, it's funny to me. Like, it's like a
Yeah,
sponsored post on LinkedIn. It's like, great story there, but I'm not sure who's clicking it, but they're not qualified. So almost all that we do is based off of, I would say, organic kind of thought leadership, just because we rank both through those URLs as well as like historical content and backlinks very highly for most of the search terms. Obviously, we're starting to see an uptick in employer review sites, or excuse me, product review sites driving traffic, because those reviews generally tend to be pretty favorable to our technology. And I also think that partnerships and organic social, so getting involved in a conversation rather than just announcing, has been really advantageous as well.
I love it. Yeah, let's dive into that partnership conversation because it's the second time we brought it up. So,
Sure.
what is a good partnership for you? Talk to me about what kind of partnerships are you looking at, and what characteristics of that partnership make for a successful relationship?
So if it's something like, here's our standard partner agreement, here's a portal, go at it, like, that's cool. I can have an alliances person do that and not stress it. So for me, a good partner is somebody who doesn't have a very tightly defined program in place for working with partners, but really wants to co-market as opposed to just get in on deals later, right?
Yeah.
For me, that is a brand that has complementary ICPs, but also, it's a little sexy to have our brand associated with theirs because, frankly, like, we're an accounting and
Yep.
payroll, not sexy. So that is ideal to me. And then I think obviously they have to have something to say. I'm not going to mimic their corporate messaging or adapt it in any way. So that's a non-starter weirdly for a lot of entities. But I am not your PR person. in this case.
Yeah, I love that. And I love having points of view that are a bit contradictory to the mainstream thought process within an industry. So being able to partner, with an organization like yours and put some stuff out there that other people aren't thinking about, I'm sure is going to really help both sides of the fence, both organizations. So yeah, what kind of content or what kind of co-marketing have you seen be the most successful for you?
Honestly, so anything that is highlighting data, right? So you can data is the great thing. Like if you can pull like specific original research, generally is kind of the foundational aspect. So I'll just get 500 survey responses in from a qualified thing, and then just write like a long form paper that can then be divided into things like infographics, blog posts, all that. So I think people really want to know what their peers are doing. So that generally tends to be successful, and anything that's empirically based. So being able to take that raw data and then cut it up into a bunch of different content classes that are going to benefit both sides of the partnership, right? Because we're generally not speaking to the same angle. That tends to work best. But I do have to say, long form content, weird as it is, that's gated, well designed, and has enough on the landing page to be like visually enticing, outperforms really anything, with the exception of TikTok. But TikTok doesn't convert.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good stuff. I've got a lot of follow-up questions, but I'm thinking let's leave it right there because I want to be respectful of our time. But I think that was some good stuff, and I love the power of long form content as well. I think you've seen over recent years, long form content is really taking over, and I think when you can get your point out like that and be able to prove it through the data, I think you've got a lot that you can stand on
Yeah, well,
in
I'm
in
gonna
your
I'm gonna leave it at this. Actually, long form content's dying. Like I just started a podcast as well,
sure.
because this is easy. This is disposable. You'll have it cut in an hour, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, generally in marketing, the harder the activity is, the more differentiated it is. And so, I think we talked about opportunities earlier. Everyone's going to sound the same in about 6 months because everyone's using the same large language models. So
right.
if you have a distinct voice or point of view, that needs to be where you're putting your focus, because and I say this respectfully, I have one as well. The last thing the world needs is two people on camera talking about theoretical business advice.
Yeah.
Um, Data from peers generally tends to be the magic formula.
That's good, man. I love it, and that's why I do this. I love the conversations and what I learned, so I appreciate you sharing that. One more question, and then we're going to jump into a lightning round. It goes real quick. It's fun, but the this last question is a little more on the personal side. So I want to hear what's the biggest challenge you faced in your career, and how did it shape you? How did it change how you do business today?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge of my career, honestly, was going from working I mean, I was employed by a larger company, but I was an editor. I had full editorial control, independence, and I loved muckraking, like digging dirt on companies, chasing down stories and that stuff. Making the flip to corporate, moving slower, being very deliberate with what you say, and not breaking news, but trying to prevent it from being broken in some cases. That's been a
Sure.
challenge that I still don't have to work through, is reconciling the personal brand that I've built, which is generally a little bit cooler than the one that my brand wants conveyed to the accountants and tax people of the world, who
Right.
generally don't like profanity, pop culture references, or like tongue-in-cheek hip-hop
Yeah.
lines thrown in there. So, still something that I'm working through, is how to appeal to the man without sounding too much like him.
It's a balancing act. I love it. All right, let's jump into that lightning round. So I've got a list of questions. Just whatever first comes to your mind, that's what I want to hear.
All right,
But we're going to start with a real easy one. Coffee or tea?
coffee,
Awesome. I've had several of them already today. What's one tool or system you rely on to keep your organization running smoothly?
Google Workplace.
Yeah, same here. Biggest trend you see that will shape the industry in the next 5 years? I think I know the answer.
Um, I think that the biggest trend is actually globalization. So remote teams
Okay.
and distributed workforces.
Yeah, I would agree with you on to that. Actually, I think that's a whole nother topic we could talk about. All right, favorite book, podcast, or resource that's influenced you?
So I think that my favorite books is anything written by Bukowski. Um,
Okay.
I would put up there. It's a great example of somebody who writes with voice in a form that is very different than everyone else, and it's
Sure.
memorable.
I love it. I'm going to check them out. A business decision that you made that changed everything for your organization, or maybe just you personally.
I think for me personally, it was going to my studio job and being a scab and getting kicked out of the Writers Guild and the Producers
Ooh,
Guild, meaning that I had to then, of course, be a recruiter and blogger. So
yeah.
that change, and then I think the other one for me certainly was at this organization was probably saying, I don't need to be a thought leader to prove that I'm good at marketing. I don't need a spotlight to talk about recruiting. And I'm really just focused on customer acquisition and expansion. And so I've been kind of in the last few months really trying to be more of a CMO and less of a smartass.
That's good. I love it. All right. What's one bucket list item you've already checked off?
I actually got to meet Jay Z and Magic Johnson within the last year. So I'll put those on the
Nice.
list. Yeah. Two,
I
two
would
of
say
them, my
that's
three
up there.
childhood heroes. Michael Jordan, a little bit harder, but we'll see you. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, yeah. I think that you can get that one. All right. What's one goal you're still working towards?
Retiring, not having to do this.
Still good. All right, Matt. If our listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
So definitely not LinkedIn, but I would say at Matt Charney on X/Twitter, or just drop me an email at matt@employer.com. Pretty easy.
Love it. Well, I appreciate you joining the podcast today. For everyone else, this is a wrap of Scaling Smart. I'm your host, Billy Mitchell, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the Scaling Smart podcast, where we have conversations with real people who have real stories who have learned how to scale smart.